Good evening, Jaguars. Mrs. Adams is back for our newest adventure, Guardians of Ga'Hoole. This is the first book in this series and it's called The Capture. How many of you have seen the movie? It came out years ago. I know I have. My kids really enjoyed it. I'm hoping that you enjoy this book as much as I know I will. Let's get started with the prologue. The world spiraled. The needles of the old fir tree blurred against the night sky, and then there was a sickening sensation as the forest floor raced toward him. Soren madly tried to beat his stubby little wings. Useless, he thought. I am dead, a dead owlet. 3 weeks out of the shell, and my life ends. Suddenly, something began to soften his fall. A pocket of breeze? A cushion of wind? A downy fluff of air lacing through his unsightly patches of fuzz? What was it? Time slowed. His short life flowed by him, every second of it from his very first memory. Chapter 1, A Nest Remembered. Noctis, can you spare a bit more down, darling? I think our third little one is about to arrive. That egg is beginning to crack. Not again, sighed Clud. What do you mean, Clud? Not again. Don't you want another little brother? His father said. There was an edge to his voice. Or sister, his mother sighed the low, soft whistle barn owls sometimes used. I'd like a sister, Soren peeped up. You just hatched out 2 weeks ago. Clud turned to Soren, his younger brother. What do you know about sisters? Maybe, Soren thought to himself, they would be better than brothers. Clud seemed to have resented him since the moment he had first hatched. You really wouldn't want them arriving just when you're about to begin branching, Clud said dully. Branching was the first step, literally, toward flight. The young owlets would begin by hopping from branch to branch and flapping their wings. Now, Clud, his father admonished. Don't be impatient. There'll be time for branching. Remember, you won't have your flight feathers for at least another month or more. Soren was just about to ask what a month was when he heard a crack. The owl family all seemed to freeze. To any other forest creature, the sound would have been imperceptible, but barn owls were blessed with extraordinary hearing. It's coming, Soren's mother gasped. I'm so excited. I know how she feels. Every time we incubate chicken eggs, I get so excited when I see that first pip. She sighed again and looked rapturously at the pure white egg as it rocked back and forth. A tiny hole appeared, and from it protruded a small spur. It's Eggtooth by Glaus! Soren's father exclaimed. Mine was bigger, wasn't it, Da? Clud shoved Soren aside for a better look, but Soren crept back up under his father's wing. Oh, I don't know, son, but isn't it a pretty, glistening little point? Always gives me a thrill. Such a tiny little thing pecking its way into the big, wide world. Ah, bless my gizzard, the wonder of it all. It did indeed seem a wonder. Soren stared at the hole that now began to split into 2 or 3 cracks. The egg shuddered slightly, and the cracks grew longer and wider. He had done this himself just 2 weeks ago. This was exciting. What happened to my egg tooth, Mum? It dropped off, stupid, Clud said. Oh, Soren said quietly. His parents were so absorbed in the hatching that they didn't reprimand Clud for his rudeness. Where's Mrs. P? Mrs. P! His mother said urgently. Right here, ma'am, said Mrs. Plithiver. The old blind snake who had been with the owl family for years and years slithered into the hollow. Blind snakes, born without eyes, served as nest maids and were kept by many owls to make sure the nests were clean and free of maggots and various insects that found their way into the hollows. Mrs. P, no maggots or vermin in that corner where Noctis put in fresh down. Course not, ma'am. Now how many broods of owlets have I been through with you? Oh, sorry, Mrs. P. How could I have ever doubted you? I'm always nervous at the hatching. Each one is just like the first time. I never get used to it. Don't you apologize, ma'am. You think any other birds would care 2 whits if their nest was clean? The stories I've heard about seagulls, oh my goodness. Well, I won't even go into it. Blind snakes prided themselves on working for owls, whom they considered the noblest of birds. Meticulous, the blind snakes had great disdain for other birds that they felt were less clean due to their unfortunate digestive processes that caused them to eliminate only sloppy wet droppings instead of nice neat bundles, the pellets that owls yarked up or spit up. Although owls did digest the soft parts of their food in a manner similar to other birds, and indeed passed it in a liquid form, for some reason they were never associated with these lesser digestive processes. All the fur and bones and tiny teeth of their prey, like mice, that could not be digested in the ordinary way were pressed into little pellets just the shape and size of the owl's gizzard. Several hours after eating, the owls would yarp them up. Wet poopers is how many nest-made snakes referred to other birds. Of course, Mrs. Plithiver was much too proper to use such coarse language. "Mum!" Soren gasped. "Look at that!" The nest suddenly seemed to reverberate with a huge cracking sound. Again, only huge to the ear slits of barn owls. Now the egg split. A pale, slimy blob flopped out. "It's a girl!" A long shriek call streamed from his mother's throat. It was the shriek of pure happiness. "Adorable!" Soren's mother sighed. "Enchanting," said Soren's father. Clud yawned, and Soren stared dumbfounded at the wet, naked thing with its huge, bulging eyes sealed tightly shut. "What's wrong with her head, Mum?" Soren asked. "Nothing, dear. Chicks just have very large heads. It takes a while for their bodies to catch up. Not to mention their brains," Clud muttered. "So they can't hold their heads up right away?" said his mother. "You were the same way." "What shall we call the little dear?" Soren's father asked. "Eglantine," Soren's mother replied immediately. "I have always wanted a little Eglantine." "Oh, Mom, I love that name," Soren said. He softly repeated the name. Then he tipped toward the little pulsing mass of white. "Eglantine," he whispered softly, and he thought he saw one little sealed eye open just a slit, and a tiny voice seemed to say, "Hi." Soren loved his little sister immediately. 1 second, Eglantine had been this quivering little wet blob, and then, minutes later, it seemed as if she had turned into a fluffy white ball of down. She grew stronger quickly, or so it appeared to Soren. His parents assured him that he, too, had done exactly the same. That evening, it was time for her first insect ceremony. Her eyes were fully open, and she was bawling with hunger. Eglantine could hardly make it through her father's "Welcome to Tyto" speech. "Little Eglantine, welcome to the forest of Tyto, forest of the barn owls, or Tyto alba, as we are more formally known. Once upon a time, long, long ago, we did indeed live in barns, but now we and other Tyto cousins live in this forest kingdom known as Tyto. We are rare indeed, and we are perhaps the smallest of all the owl kingdoms, although in truth it has been a long time since we had a king. Someday when you grow up, when you enter your 2nd year, You too will fly out from this hollow and find one of your own in which to live with a mate. This was the part of the speech that amazed and disturbed Soren. He simply could not imagine growing up and having a nest of his own. How could he be separated from his parents? And yet, there was this urge to fly, even now with his stubby little wings that lacked even the smallest sign of true flight feathers. And now, Soren's father continued, it is time for your first insect ceremony. He turned to Soren's mother. Morella, my dear, can you bring forward the cricket? Soren's mother stepped up. In her beak, she held one of the summer's last crickets. Eat up, young'un, head first. Yes, down the beak. Yes, always head first. That's the proper way, be it cricket, mouse, or vole. Sighed Soren's father as he watched his daughter swallow the cricket. Dizzy in the gizzy, ain't it so? Clud blinked and yawned. Sometimes his parents really embarrassed him, especially his da with his stupid jokes. Wit of the wood, muttered Clud. Well, that was a beautiful way to start our new journey with Soren and his family. I look forward to seeing what happens next as we finish chapter 1 tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening, Jaguars.